Wargames. We're here with Michael, and Michael has an updated Vendread deck profile. As you can see, we've got the new Vendread Executioner, and we've got the Vampire Sucker, and of course Vendread Evolution. So Michael, without further ado, take us through your profile and show us what is now updated.
Alright guys, so I've been testing out this deck, and I think I've finally found the ratios that I'm most comfortable with. I'll be going through some of my explanations of some of the choices as I'm going through the profile. So if you've got any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll be sure to get back to you. So, starting off with the monsters is, of course, 3 copies of Solitaire. Pretty self-explanatory, it's your main starter for the combos. Then 2 Uni-Zombies. I'm only going with 2 Uni-Zombies this time as opposed to 3 because obviously you are already playing the 3 Solitaires, and I am trying to keep the deck to sort of quite a low count because there are so many cards you can put in here, but I just felt like 2 was enough, and you don't really want to open with multiples in your hand. That's been working pretty well for me so far. And then, of course, 3 copies of Mizuki. Don't need to explain that at all. And then we've got a few one-offs. Gozuki. I really love this as a one-off. There's so many ways to recycle it and get its effect off. And just an all-round really great card. 1 copy of Spirit Master. This did come up a few times during some of the games I've played with this deck. And that being able to pop a card on the field when it's banished really comes up a few times. So it's another reason why he's there. And of course, making rank 4s with Solitaire is very nice. Moving on to the Vendreads, playing 2 copies of Hound Horde. I feel like 2 copies is just right for this one. Obviously, in my opinion, he's one of the better Vendread monsters. Being able to banish spells and traps is very crucial. And the fact that he can easily summon himself through his own effect is ideal. And 2 of those. 1 copy of Striggs. Strings comes up quite a few times actually, being able to go into Trish or something, and the fact that we're now playing Vampire Sucker means you can get a draw during the opponent's turn, and it's really useful. It's the effect that it gives the ritual monster doesn't come up that often, but it's good to have that just in case. 1 copy of Revenants, 1 copy for the similar reasons with the Uni-Zombie. You don't want to open with multiples. I'm considering bumping this up to 2 just because of the new ritual spell. Lets me send from deck as well. But for now, 1's been working pretty well. 1 core. And 1 of the new monsters, which is Amina. For those of you who don't know, Amina is a Vendread where if it's in the graveyard, I can banish it and target one of my banished Vendread monsters. So say, for example, I've got a Hound Horde that's been banished due to its own effect. I can banish Amina and then special summon the Hound Horde from my banished zone. And immediately that sets you up for a ritual summon. That's very useful. And it kind of sucks that it's a 1-star because of course you want as many stars as possible to fulfill the ritual requirements, but its effect does come up sometimes. The effect that it gives the ritual monster is that whatever it destroys as a result of battle gets banished. So in some matchups that can be very, very crucial. And then moving on to the ritual monsters. Of course we're playing Triple Slayer. If you ask me, it's the best ritual this deck has to offer right now. And of course, it's the one you want to go into the most. 1 copy of Battle Lord. Its effect does come up a few times when you're sort of going for a big push. You can declare trap cards or something, or maybe declare monster effects so your opponent can't respond with any hand traps after you've made your play, before you made your play rather. So it is very useful. And of course, 2/7 is very nice tap points. And I'm only playing 1 copy of the new Executor. Being at 8 makes him quite difficult to summon, because obviously, unless you're pretty much going into him late game, or mid to late game, you're going to struggle to fulfill the level requirements. And I feel 1's just perfect. There is, of course, very useful cards to summon with him. For those of you who don't know, when it's on the field, this is the only card your opponent can target with card effects. And of course, if you've summoned him with Vendread Core, then he cannot be targeted. So your whole board is essentially free from being targeted, which is very, very powerful. It doesn't come up that often, that combo, but when it does, it's very nice. And to round up the monsters, 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Of course, this is by no means necessary for the deck, but I just like it in here. The fact that it's a zombie really comes up if you need like an additional monster to banish from your grave with Origin. Just for a ritual summon, it does come up. And of course, it's always good to limit the amount of cards your opponent can play. So that's it for the monster lineup. Moving on to spells. I'm playing 2 copies of the new Vendread Evolution. So this is one of the things I really think the deck needed, which was more ritual spells. So that way you're not just relying on your 3 copies of Origin to start ritual summoning, because there are going to be games where you don't see that. And I really like this card. It's very good, the fact that you can send a Vendread monster from the deck as well. The only thing is, it has to be exact, whatever you're summoning. So in the case of Executor, this becomes even harder because you've got to have exactly 8 stars, and whatever you send from deck to grave has to, of course, be the appropriate level. So it is quite situational, but it is good just to be able to have access to more ritual summons. And the other part of the effect is whatever you ritual summon gets destroyed in the, I believe it's the next end phase, the end phase of the next turn. So in the case of Slayer, that's not so bad, you then get its effect off, but it's all about just being able to ritual summon quickly and get your effects off. So it's quite good. Considering going to 3 of the card, but for now I'm just testing out 2. Of course, I'm playing 3 Vendread Origin. Very, very powerful card, especially being able to protect your Slayer from the graveyards. Just an all-round really great card. And to touch those out, playing 3 copies of Pre-Preparation of Rites. Pretty self-explanatory for anyone familiar with this deck, being able to grab Origin and Slayer right off the bat. Very, very useful. Immediately go plus, which is something this deck desperately needs. 2 copies of Vendread Charge. I'm trying out 2 copies because I feel like right now it's more focused on the Vendread side, on the ritual summon of the deck rather than the synchro summons of the deck, and this just allows you to set up your board very quickly. And if you're discarding something like a Hound Horde or a Mizuki, it's not so bad because then you can immediately make use of those monsters in the graveyard. So it really is quite useful, and this does help you with your Link summons or synchro summons if it comes to that. I'm playing 2 copies of Preparation of Rites. I've noticed that since we now have more ritual spells and more monsters to go with, you're able to ritual summon more than once per turn, and that makes this card even more powerful because you then get that ritual spell back from your graveyard. So there's just many ways to abuse this card. The only thing you can't grab with this is Executor, but I feel like there are just so many ways to get access to him regardless. So it's not really that crucial. 2 copies of Allure of Darkness. There aren't that many monsters I really want to banish from this deck, but there are quite a few darks. But thanks to Anima, there's ways to recycle them and summon them back to the field. And of course, we are playing things like Cypher Emerald Omega, so there's many ways to recycle the monsters. And I just wanted to give this deck a bit more draw power, aside from the draw power that Vampire Sucker's already giving, and just a bit more consistency, really. There are hands where you just open many monsters and you don't see any of your spells. You just want to dig for those as fast as possible. And rounding off the spells are just 3 one-ofs, 1 copy of Burial from Different Dimension, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Foolish Burial. I like just 1 Burial because, like I mentioned, there are other ways to recycle your banished monsters, and I find it doesn't come up as often as it did with some of my earlier builds. But 1 has been working pretty well for me. So that's it for the spells, and the last card in the deck is 1 copy of Vendread Daybreak. A lot of people have expressed dislike for this card. I actually think this card has some potential. For those of you who don't know, what it does is if your opponent controls more cards than you, and you control a ritual summon Vendread monster, you can destroy all cards on the field, but the downside is the Vendread monster that you selected cannot declare a direct attack. But of course there are so many ways around that. You can then use that monster to ritual summon again in the next turn, or synchro it off, or go into a Link summon or something. There are so many ways around that, and it's nicer just being able to wipe your opponent's board just at the drop of a hat when they commit to it. The only thing is this card is not searchable, and that's one of the things I think the archetype desperately needed, was ways to search its Vendread spells or traps. Slayer sort of searches ritual spell, but then again you're already in a good position if you've been able to ritual summon the Slayer, so I think that's one of the things Konami really let us down with, but it is what it is. So that's the main deck. That's 42 cards, I believe. Moving on to the extra deck. Playing 2 copies of Vampire Sucker. This card is absolutely amazing. It's come up so many times. Being able to draw a card just when you revive a zombie from the grave is very, very useful. You've got to be careful how you go into this. You've got to make sure you have a means of summoning back from the grave to get the full value of this card. But it does come up. And there are a few other abilities, being able to tribute summon. If you're tribute summoning a zombie-type monster, you can tribute the opponent's monster for it. Or something along those lines. Yeah, an opponent's zombie-type monster, and its first effect kind of leads to that. but that doesn't really come up too often. You're not really tribute something with this deck. But yeah, it's great to finally have this card available in TCG. So I play 2 copies of that. And then to round off the Link monsters, 1 copy of Decode Talker and 1 copy of Skuldred. Skuldred does come up a few times because you can swarm the board quite easily. You're playing so many different names that it's quite easy to go into this card, and then you just dig your deck for a pre-prep or a ritual spell, and then of course you can make that play, and then Skuldred will give it some extra points, so very, very useful. And Decode's, of course, classic. You've got to keep him in the deck. For the XYZs, I'm only playing a couple. That's Baguska and Tornado Dragon. Tornado Dragon's just in there for additional spell and trap removal outside of Hound Horde. And Baguska's just in there as a solid turn 1 play in the off chance you don't want to go into an Omega or something. And yeah, both been working pretty well for me. For the Synchros, playing 1 copy of Coral Dragon. This doesn't come up that often, but it's nice to go into it, being able to out a card or something like that. And then there are some nice combos, like you can link summon Coral Dragon with 3 other names into Skuldred. And then you can make this Chainik 1 and this Chainik 2 in the grave. So this to draw 4, shuffle 3 back, and this to draw a card. If your opponent has the Ash, they have to respond to the Coral. So that's a pretty good play. So, I don't know, it doesn't come up that often, but when it is there, it's nice. That's a fun little combo right there. 1 copy of Black Rose Dragon. I see a lot of Shirinu Vendread decks not playing this, and I don't understand why. It is an amazing card, being able to reset a board just like that. Very, very useful. And of course, Unizombie gets you to this card very quickly. And just ideal for this deck. Moving on to the 8 stars. 2 copies of Omega. I find 2 to be just right. I feel if you're going into the 3rd one, something's not going well. You're obviously doing something wrong there. 2 Omegas is just fine. Remember, they can recycle themselves. And yeah, 2 is just great. 1 copy of Shogun Saga. Shogun Saga is great for when you need to make that really huge push for game, or perhaps need to run over something very, very big. Being able to banish something like one of your ritual monsters from the grave, and it will absorb its attack points for the turn. Very useful. 1 copy of Beals. This is more for the Draco matchup. Unizombie is the dark tuner that we'd use this for. And it's nice to go into. The opponent, obviously, most of the time won't think you're going into this. They'll probably think you're going into an Omega or something, and they won't respond with their Masterpiece. Then you just go into this and just ruin their day, basically. 1 copy of Scarlight. This is good as sort of a finisher. So if you've gone for quite a bit of damage during the battle phase, then for main phase 2, if you haven't finished them off, synchro summon to this, blow up what's left of your board, and just finish them off with the burn damage. So that's good as a last resort, maybe, to go for game. 1 copy of Trishula. Since we're playing Vendread Strings, there's quite a few ways to go into. There's a variety of monsters to go into this, and this is another last resort to maybe get rid of a few problem monsters on the field, or just a few random cards here and there. So very useful. And the last monster in the extra deck is 1 Sun Saga. I like Sun Saga because there are times when I'll go for a ritual summon of Slayer, and I've used Unizombie's effect on itself, so that immediately sets up Sun Saga, and then you'll get Slayer's effect in the graveyard. So it does come up a few times, and 3500 attack is very, very powerful. So that's deck profile, guys. If you have any suggestions or any questions about the deck, like I mentioned before, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll be sure to get back to you. In the meantime, thanks for watching.
Excellent. So that's Michael's Vendread deck. It's very, very interesting, and like I've said from the start, wait till the OCG get this deck, because then they'll do what they've done with Burning Abyss, Spirals. They'll add a card to the deck that might not bust it, but will still make it a bit more playable. They even did it with Subterrors, like Guru is, that addition is still very, very good. So don't write this deck off. Pick it up while you can, while it's, like, the majority of this stuff is very, very cheap as a core engine.
Yeah.
And give it a go. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. And as always, guys, happy dueling. Also, YouTube, thanks for watching that video. I hope you liked it. If you did, hit that like button. And of course, don't forget to hit that big red subscribe button in the bottom left-hand corner and the notification bell so you don't miss out on anything. We've got more deck profiles, duels, pack openings, and many more Yu-Gi-Oh videos coming up for you all year round. So don't forget to stay tuned for all of that. Thanks, and as always, guys, happy dueling.